September 19th sees the release of Rambo: Last Blood, the fifth Rambo movie. To mark the occasion, we will go back and provide retrospective reviews of each of the earlier four movies. In this video, we've gotten to the fourth one, simply called Rambo, or John Rambo in some territories. Joining me to discuss that are, as usual, Tom Connors.
Hello.
And special guest star Matthew Kadish, author of the Earthman Jack books.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm really looking forward to talking about this one because it's my second favorite Rambo movie.
I will also say it is my second favorite Rambo movie. In fact, I like it so much that I'll go first on this one because I think I might have seen it before any of you guys. Because when the movie came out back in 2008, we had a preview screening in Norway 1 week before the movie was released in the States. And I attended that one preview screening. That was pretty cool because that was in the venue that we call Rockefeller, where you can have beer and everything. So we were drinking beer and we were halfway drunk while watching the movie. And leading into the movie, there were like these rumors that the movie was super violent and stuff like that. I was like thinking, that's nothing. I'm so desensitized. This is not going to affect me at all. Not 30 seconds into the movie, I was like, holy shit. Okay, so this is what we're talking about, yeah. What a ride. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had in any theater. It's a freaking fantastic movie. Both story, tone, pace, everything. Absolutely love it. I love this movie. I appreciate the first one more, but for sheer entertainment, my God, this is the best one. Plus, there is some story and subtext there, which just makes it all the sweeter. I just wanted to get that out of the way.
I fell in love with it, but I did go see it in the theater as well. And I think it is one of the best films of the series. As you guys said, my second favorite after the first film. Oddly enough, 20 years after the last Rambo movie to the year, we get the fourth film in the series, which normally a fourth film in a series is not a good thing. There's very few fourth films that I can think of that are really that good, like maybe Nightmare on Elm Street and Rocky. I'm stretching otherwise right off the hand to think maybe one of the Planet of the Apes movies, whichever one was the fourth one. I think that was pretty good. But no, this was it took me by surprise. I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be the movie it was. Kind of like Andre going in, I was like, oh, it's going to be another one of the Rambo movies probably, and it wasn't. The basic synopsis, so we can jump into that. In Thailand, Rambo joins a group of mercenaries to venture into war-torn Burma and rescue a group of Christian aid workers who are kidnapped by a ruthless local infantry unit. So it's kind of a little bit off the beaten path, but it's kind of close to home for Rambo. It kind of sets up that he's still doing his similar kind of thing in part 3, and but he's a little more grizzled, a lot older. And this one, it takes it back to the dark roots of the original film. I know this is author David Morrell's favorite film besides the first film. He feels like this is the spiritual sequel to the original film in a lot of ways, because I've heard him talk very highly of this film in the press. So
yeah, there are a lot of things to unpack about this movie. So first of all, we got to look at Sylvester Stallone's career up to this point, because this movie was kind of early on in the resurgence of Sylvester Stallone and what I would call the Stallone Renaissance, where basically you had this period of time in like the late 90s to the early 2000s where Sylvester Stallone's career had basically taken a hit, and he wasn't making the type of blockbusters that he used to. And then he kind of basically decided to get back to his roots and take control of his career, and he did the Expendables and this movie.
Well, and it started with Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
Because right before Rocky Balboa, he was doing straight-to-video stuff, basically, for the most part. And then he was just lucky MGM was, like, desperate. Otherwise, I don't see a world where Rocky Balboa happens. And then you have the other side of it where Rocky Balboa has to be good. And not only does Rocky Balboa have to be good, it is as good as it is, and it's almost considered like the best of the series since the first film by a lot of critics and some of the general audience. And Rocky Balboa gets this film made, period, hands down. If it wasn't for that, period.
My point was is that this is a time period where Stallone is kind of taking a more active role in his career and getting back to writing and telling good stories. And so
that's what he did. Yeah, he wrote and directed Rocky Balboa, and then I think
he directed this one. And basically, so like you have Stallone, who's kind of like on the rebound when this movie's coming around, and he's kind of like this is basically First Blood Part 2, but in a different sense. And I think that's one of the reasons why David Morrell considers it the spiritual sequel to the first movie. Because it basically just took the plot of the second movie and redid it in a much better way, in my opinion. And the character of Rambo, we talked about how these movies are very anti-establishment. He's basically withdrawn from modern society. He's gone back to like the simple life in the jungle, doing like a tour group, with his boat. And there's a lot of political undertones in this movie as well, where it's about the naivete of a certain viewpoint of people who don't understand the realities of war, and how I mean, one of the greatest character arcs in this movie is that missionary guy who's all about nonviolence, and then by the end of the movie he realizes he's got to crush this guy's head with a rock in order to survive. And like when it comes down to survival, all your moral compasses go out the window, so like there's a lot of, subtext here. There's also the fact that Sylvester Stallone made a conscious decision in this movie to include mercenaries, because he was like, look, I'm old. Rambo, the character, is old. I don't buy him, taking on this entire battalion all by himself. So I'm going to add in these mercenary characters to kind of make it a little bit more realistic. And but it's this movie hits on it on all levels. It's got great character arcs. It's very brutal and in your face. It's got a lot of subtext to it, like the first couple of movies did, and it's got great action in it too. Like the final war scene where Rambo gets behind that 50 caliber massive cannon. That's like, in my opinion, that's one of the most iconic and cinematic Rambo scenes ever shot. So there's so much in this movie that they do right, and they basically take the good stuff from the earlier films and expand and improve upon it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it works so well.
I want to add one thing to the filming of it, because you mentioned the action scene, and I agree that's one of the best action scenes ever made, but also the entire movie. This is one of the finest examples of guerrilla filmmaking ever made. There's no studio here. They went into the jungle and they shot it. This was a very painful, difficult shoot for everyone involved, just because of the location. And look at the movie. Look at the masterpiece they got out of it. So this is a triumph of filmmaking, I would say, as well.
I also think that the action in this movie is more brutal than any of the action in the previous movies. Like Rambo 3 got a lot of criticism for being like extremely violent at the time, but in this movie, like you're literally seeing kids get executed by soldiers and stuff like that, like little kids, and it doesn't flinch. It shows these kids die. It shows the reality of the horrors of this.
Doesn't glorify war the way the first two sequels did. Not the first film, but Rambo 2 and 3.
It's the antithesis to the third movie where it's all about the action. Like here, the action is actually like violence. It's not meant to be
it's very realistic. Yeah,
it's not meant to be spectacle. It's meant to be like a realistic version, very similar to the first two films. And I feel like getting back to the basics of this character and the story and stuff like that is what makes this movie work so well, because again, we have John Rambo with a character arc. We have the political subtext. We have a supporting cast, which is actually really interesting as well. And I feel like this could have been a really good kind of bookend to the franchise, but at the same time, it did leave open this idea that there's more stories to be told with with John Rambo, and that brings us to the new movie. Where Tom, you mentioned in the first video that we did that Rambo: First Blood was kind of a Western, and now like literally you got him at the ranch, with a cowboy hat and stuff like that. And so like I feel like whereas Rambo, the fourth movie was kind of a redo of the second film, I feel like the final film is going to be a redo of the first film in a way.
Well, Rambo 5 looks a lot to be basically True Grit meets Rambo,
Yeah, so like I feel like the next one's going to continue the tradition that this one started, where they take the best bits from the first movie and kind of put it into this one. Because one of the great things about Rambo is that like he's a super soldier, but a lot of his victories and a lot of the reason why he's so effective is his preparation. Like he's able to kind of think ahead of how these battles go and prepare for them. And so like, we've seen bits and pieces of that in the trailer for the next movie where he's, basically booby trapping his ranch and preparing to take on like these guys who are going to come after him. Whereas in this movie, it was more about him going into enemy territory, just like he did in the second one. So it's going to be an interesting kind of evolution here that we're going to get to see. But I'm definitely with Andre on this one. When I went and saw it in the theater, I was blown away by how good it was, because I was coming into it with the Rambo 3 mentality of like, this guy's a caricature, this guy, like it's blown up. Like I haven't seen a good Stallone movie since Demolition Man, type thing. And I was pleasantly surprised at how good this was. And I also thought that all the political subtext and the storytelling and the directing and the action, like everything just clicked for me. And so I feel like this movie just barely is inched out by the first movie in terms of like how good it is when it comes to this franchise.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece, plain and simple. I really don't have anything else to say. It's funny when a movie is bad, you can talk about it forever and ever and ever. Whereas here, everything clicks, everything is perfect. I don't really have that much more to say about it.
We can talk a little bit about how the financials broke down. It did have a big budget, $50 million. And domestically, it didn't do that well. Maybe it is because it did leak online. That's very possible. It only did $42 million domestically. But foreignly, it did $70 million, and overall did about $113 million. So it didn't lose money. It did okay, since it didn't cost as much as a third film. And
by Hollywood standards, $50 million in 2007.
Yeah,
that's low budget. Considered low budget. Well, it came out in 2008.
It did pretty much do what it's supposed to do, and I don't think it had a huge advertising budget or anything like that. It was released by a smaller.
And at the time, Stallone was considered to be a has-been, and it was kind of the start of him getting back into the saddle, so to speak, in terms of like his career. So,
well, as I said, if it wasn't for Rocky Balboa, I don't think he got money to make this movie. But from here, he tried to make a fifth Rambo movie like right off the bat. I mean, we got a documentary where we talk about how many different times he tried to make a Rambo movie after this until we got the new one now. But that's just it. This movie set up so many things and so many possibilities for this fifth film to where here we are again, another 10 years at least anyway. 10 years.
Now it's another 11 years since the last one.
Here we are from the original, and it's like, this character's come almost full circle, and some people think that he may die in this next one, but then there's things that Stallone has said in the press that makes me wonder if he doesn't survive, and the doors open still for a sixth film.
I mean, what, he's in his 70s now, right? I mean, right? How long can he take this type of punishment and still keep going?
Yeah, but that's the thing with him. It's weird how he's like, he just keeps on trucking. The same thing with the Rocky character. You thought he was done with Rocky Balboa, but he dusted it off for Creed and Creed 2, and I'm sure I think they're doing a third film here, and he's a part of that as well. Now, I don't know if they're going to do a callback to Rocky 3 and have, Rocky pass away in the third Creed film to kind of bring it full circle, but we'll see how that goes. And the same thing I just have a weird feeling with this film called Last Blood. I don't know if he's just doing a little misdirection in the press. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that.
I believe that they're making it so that next Rambo movie could be the last one, but they're going to do that thing where like, okay, if this is the last one, this is going to be a good way to end it. But if we choose to do another one, we gave ourselves the leeway to do it. So I think it's going to be one of those things where it's like, yeah, this could be the final Rambo, but at the same time, the potential for one more is there. So I think that's what they're going to do with it. But we'll see. We'll see. It comes out soon.
Yeah, and in fact, by the time most people are viewing this, we'll either be just prepping or getting ready to do our roundtable, or it'll be available for you to listen to on our feelings on the film. So, Andre, going into the fifth film, what are your hopes, dreams? What do you think we're going to get out of this?
I hope it's going to be as good, or at least close to as good, as the first and the fourth movies. And I think we're in for a treat. At least I hope so. I certainly can't wait for it.
I predict this film is going to get lambasted by the critics. It's going to be called all those nasty things that every film that has anything to do with guys being guys gets called.
That goes without saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that we're going to eat it up. I hope it does very, very well at the box office. I hope it does better than the last film at the box office. In fact, I think it's the time. I hate to get political right now, but I do think it's time we need Rambo. We need this. Like, we need it to be popular. We need it to catch on. You know, we need to remember what men were like at one time. I hate to put it that way, but it's like, you know, you get to a point where Rambo's the guy you need, and I hope this film is the right movie at the right time.
I agree with that. Hollywood needs to get the signal. They need to see that there's a demand for this kind of movie.
Like I would love more 80s style action movies coming out. And I would also love more movies that kind of are well written and are made with care, as opposed to just slapped together and pushed out for a quick buck. So,
yeah. All right, we shall see how the movie turns out in just a couple of days. So until then, Matt, where people can find you?
Well, if you want to check me out, you can go on Amazon.com and search for my books, Earthman Jack, or you can go to kadishbooks.com. That's KADISH books.com. That'll take you right to my Amazon page. And if you want to check out my YouTube channel, where I post videos on movie news and entertainment news and industry analysis and stuff like that, you can go to Kadish Video, KADISH video.com. That'll take you right to my YouTube page. And you can also check me out on Twitter at Matthew Kadish.
And Tom, where can people find you?
Well, of course, you can find me here at Midnight's Edge After Dark.
And me, you can find right here at Midnight's Edge.